Cole, you ready? So, in this cabinet is where we keep our portable angle grinders. There's also some cordless drills or corded, and then there's a cordless drill which you'll be using later on for one of your other projects. So we have one of our angle grinders here and the other. They're both the same brand, Milwaukee, but there are two different styles. So basically the trigger system's a little bit different. You may find one that you like better than the other if you choose to use it, but really I would get used to using them both at some point in time. So I'm going to show you or demonstrate how to use this with this one. So let's head over here. You can see that when you're done with them, you wrap the cord up around the body of the angle grinder, and then it goes back in the cabinet. You close the cabinet up for the day. So any questions on where they're located? It's important that we put our tools back when we're done for the day, and that way they're where they need to be for the next person that uses them. So let's head over here to this table. We'll look at your lab manuals on portable angle grinder safety. This plate here was cut yesterday. We'll take it out. Yesterday we used what two tools, or I demonstrated what two tools. One, the first thing that we did was what? The metal chop saw. So we cut our plate. We cut our plate to a length of how long?
4 inches.
4 inches. So is that 4 inches, which is how long every welding plate or project that you do, with the exception of maybe one, will be. So it's important that you're cutting accurately. We talked about the safety stuff. After that, we got rid of the burrs, which you get from cutting metal. Doesn't matter what you're using to cut metal, whether you're using a chop saw, whether you're using the band saw, which is another tool we'll learn about, or whether you're even using this hand tool, which is what?
Hacksaw.
A hacksaw. So Adam, you're the video man, right? So hacksaw. If you cut metal with a hacksaw, you're going to get some sort of burr. Now, the burrs that you get from the chop saw are probably more aggressive or larger than what you'll get from the bandsaw or even the hacksaw. But that's what you're using to cut your metal plates. Typically, you will be using the angle grinder to remove these burrs. Now, today, after I demonstrate, each one of you will begin cutting a plate on the chop saw. One end, like I did yesterday, you will belt sand the burrs off, and then you'll bring your part up to the vise on the table, and you'll grind using the portable angle grinder the burrs off the other end. That way you have experience. I can watch. If you have any questions, I can answer those as you're doing it. So you're going to watch what I'm doing, you're going to do it. Model what I'm doing. Remember, however I explain things, the way they need to be done, make sure we're doing them that way when we're in this shop, for sure. And it is the safest way possible as explained by the manufacturer. So, moving on to number one, it says safety glasses must be worn at all times while operating the portable angle grinder. You will find that probably every single section in here starts out with or has somewhere in there about wearing safety glasses. So, just like the belt sander and the chop saw, this tool is going to create some sparks. The sparks is the material that it's removing, so you want to make sure your eyes are protected. Really, probably not going to get as many sparks directed towards you as the other two things. This is, eye protection is always important for those that are working around you as well, so we'll get into that. Two, again, the highlighted ones in this safety manual, why are they highlighted? They will be test questions. Does that make them more important than the others? Absolutely not, okay? They're all important, they're all expected to be followed. They're all the safest method of operating and how you handle this equipment. So 2 says make sure the material being ground is well secured in either a bench vise or clamped to tables provided. So this end here has the burrs that I'm going to remove. I'm going to put this in my vise, which is located on the table. We have 1, 2, one behind you guys, and one behind you guys. So there are 4 vices in this shop. 2 of them located on this table, 1 and 1 on those tables. If you go to grind something, so not something for me, something you're working on of your own accord, a personal project, and it's big enough that it won't fit correctly in the vise, you can always use a C-clamp to clamp it to one of the tables. If you bring in something bigger than we want to set on the table, then you'll probably just set it on the floor. Okay, so it's important that it's held securely, especially these smaller objects that you're grinding. Why do you think that is?
So they don't flap.
Okay, it's probably not going to fly everywhere, but it will move. So you don't want to end up grinding something you're not supposed to. Okay, so if you just set it on the table and you start grinding, it's going to move, and eventually you're probably going to grind my table. Obviously, that isn't what I want, so please make sure you're holding or securing your part with a vise. Any questions about that? 3, position the grinder so that the sparks and grit thrown during grinding will not hit the operator or others working in the area. So I'm going to unwind my cord. Obviously, it needs to be plugged in. When I go to grind, this is the handle. This black part right here is a handle. I put my right hand on this. My left hand holds the actual handle. This is set up for a right-handed person. Anybody in here left-handed? Okay, so not a big deal for you guys. If you are left-handed, you can switch the handle so it sticks out over here, but I tell students all the time, I recommend getting used to the way it's set up because this is how it's always going to be set up. The majority of my students are right-handed. If you learn how to use it this way, then it's just going to feel natural using it. So if you ever do find it switched, you want to switch it back to the way it should be. But I tell left-handed students, if you switch it, move the handle from this side to this side, then you need to move it back. So got a hold of it with 2 handles. There is a guard or a shield that protects sparks from flying back towards the operator. But when I grind, I'm going to be grinding at an angle to remove the burrs. The sparks are going to be flying in what direction? Straight towards you guys. Okay, so you need to be aware of where the sparks are going to fly before you start to grind. If someone's working at that vise over there, should I have to wait for them to grind, or could I just turn my body? Yeah, flip the direction, it starts grinding. Typically this door is shut, so I can promise you the door does not have feelings. The door does not care if it gets showered with sparks. One thing that does drive me crazy is students not paying attention. They start grinding. No one's standing here, but next thing I know, I'm sitting at my desk helping students and I'm getting sprayed with sparks. I'll probably holler over, hey, spin it around, man. There's no need for me to get sprayed with sparks and all you have to do is pivot your body. Does that make sense? Okay, so the trigger on here is right here. I take my thumb, I push it forward, it locks it into place, which keeps it running. To shut it off, the ribbed area on the trigger, I just click it and it'll shut off. It will not stop on a dime. It winds down or coasts down, similar to the chop stop. So it says hold the grinder with both hands when grinding. We kind of went over that. Until it stops spinning, you should never set it down. So you wait for it to fully stop spinning, and then you place it in the center of the table. Why would I not want this to set this down while it's spinning?
So that's to grind your table.
1, I don't want it to grind my table. 2, if this blade's rotating, it's going to spin and it's going to want to fly off the table. I can promise you if I take it and drop this grinder right now from this height and it hits the concrete floor, it's going to break something. It can break the casing, it can break the wheel, it might break the handle, but it's not going to withstand a fall to the concrete floor. This thing has a little bit of weight to it. Okay, so wait till it completely stops, place it in the center of the table. And you may have to readjust them. If you place it on the edge of the table, it may accidentally fall off. But I wouldn't consider it an accident if it falls off if you did not place it in the center of the table. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Okay, number 6, never grind in an area which houses flammable material or combustible gases. That is not a concern for you in this class. Anything that is flammable, any material or solvents that are flammable are held in our yellow fireproof cabinet in this shop. So it's not something you have to worry about, but that is in there because if you are ever using a portable grinder somewhere else, you need to be aware if there's something flammable. Obviously sparks and something flammable could cause combustion, right? I've heard war stories of people grinding in garages and a gas jug sitting around. Next thing you know, you got the garage on fire. So if you're ever using a portable grinder outside this shop, you need to be aware of your surroundings. Not an issue in here. 7, have the instructor replace the grinding wheel when it becomes worn to half of its original diameter. That's a hard thing to know. If you don't know how big the wheel is, you wouldn't know very easily what half of it is. I can tell you the paper on this grinding wheel, when When you can no longer see it or you don't see much of it, so a tiny sliver, it's probably time for the grinding wheel to be changed. If in doubt or you're not sure whether it needs change, you can always do what? Ask. You say, Whistler, does this need change? Or you say, yeah, let me grab a new wheel and change it. Or I'll say, no, go ahead, it's good to use. But it does not hurt to ask if you do not understand. The more you use it, the more you'll know whether it needs changed or not. I will show you how to change it if you need it changed. And again, I may ask you to change it if it needs changed later on. If I ask you to change the grinding wheel and you don't feel comfortable doing that, or you are wanting to work on your project and don't want to spend time changing it, do you have to change it? No, you can always say, no, I'd rather not. Whistler, I want to work on what I'm doing, or I don't quite remember it. And if you don't quite remember, I wouldn't want you to try and change it. When I change it, there's a lock, I spin it, I got a wrench in my office, I take this washer off, put a new blade on, tighten it up, run it for about 30 seconds, lock it again, and retighten it to make sure it's snug. So, I will be in charge of changing them. I may ask you to do it if you watch me do it. If you want to learn how to do it, let me know. I will definitely teach you how. So, keep the electrical cord and extension cords out and away from the work when grinding. So obviously this requires electricity, so we plug it in. The best method to do is hold the cord behind you. So I do not want the cord near where I'm grinding, so I wouldn't want it like this. Obviously, if this grinding wheel touches the cord, what's going to happen? It's going to cut the cord. If it cuts the cord, could it electrocute you or shock you? No. This is grounded. We've got breakers. It'll flip the breaker. It's not going to electrocute you or shock you, but it will ruin the cord. Obviously, if the cord's ruined, it can't work. So, cords are not cheap. This is about 80 bucks. The cord's about 40. In some instances, if I can't get a cord ordered right away, I just go out and buy a new grinder. So if you grind through my cord, be prepared to do what? Pay for a new cord or a new grinder. If they say it's going to take 2 weeks to get a new cord, I'm not going to spend 2 weeks without a second grinder. I'm going to buy a new grinder. So please be aware, have the cord behind you and away from what you're working on. Does that make sense? All right. 9, when using the portable grinder, rest when needed to prevent fatigue and increase the possibility of, which can increase the possibility of accidents. Honestly, it's going to take me maybe 20 seconds to grind the burrs. And then if I had to, I would flip it and I'd take maybe 20 seconds to grind the other side. I highly doubt, and if you do get tired in that amount of time, there's probably a physical issue that maybe you need to look into. What I'm talking about is an instance where you're spending 30 minutes grinding something. So last year, Matthew Lewis, I don't know if you know who he is, he built a bumper for the front of his truck. After he was done welding, he had a lot of grinding he had to do. He would ground for 6-7 periods, 45 minutes at a time. Once in a while, that's a pretty tedious job, and he would take a break. My example to you students is one time I was grinding, I'd done some welding late at night, I was kind of tired, doing a bunch of grinding. I slipped and cut myself, or grinded my knee right above my knee, right here in my thigh. Sometime I'll show you, there's a scar where it took out a pretty good chunk of skin. I didn't even know I did it at first. It happened so quickly, but then my jeans started to fill up with blood, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? So you got to pay attention to what you're doing, one, but if you feel yourself getting tired at some time, you say it shouldn't happen on the plates that you cut. This is going to be your primary method for removing burrs. Belt sander, yeah, you're going to do it today so you get used to it, but really the belt sander you'll be using when you're cutting your lathe part and your surface grinder part. Pretty much all burrs will be removed from welding plates using an angle grinder. So last but not least, this says never touch the grinding wheel to the material being ground unless the machine is operating at full speed to eliminate unnecessary vibration which could damage the grinder. Just like the chop saw. Yesterday we used a chop saw. We pulled the trigger, let it go full speed, down, all the way up, and then let go of the trigger. The worst thing you can do to the brushes inside the motor of this is touch it to material when it's not operating at full RPMs. So if you're gonna grind, make sure it's running at full speed. When you're done grinding, let it stop completely before you put it down. What I do not want to see happen, and this happens all the time, and at first I will give you a nice reminder, don't do that again. But if you continue to do it, then you may just be buying a new grinder. What I don't like is when people, oh, I'm done grinding, I'm gonna stop this quickly, so I just touch it to the metal. Yeah, it'll stop it pretty quickly, but it's hard on the brushes inside the motor. There's no reason to be in a big hurry here. It literally is gonna take less than 20 seconds for it to stop on its own, and if you're in that big a hurry, you're probably gonna make a mistake anyhow. So, do we understand you should not touch this to the metal unless it's operating at full speed? All right, I'm going to grind this way, so I want you guys to gather around over here. So when I do this, I'm gonna hold this to an angle. No, I want you, Adam. You're gonna be able to see what I'm doing here, my man. You'll be fine right there. So when I do this, I don't want to hold it flat because the burr is right here on this edge. If I hold it flat, it's just gonna move it from this edge to this edge. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold it at an angle. I'm gonna use both hands and nice, light, even strokes. And I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna feel. Remember, you can't see if a burr's gone, you have to feel that the burr's gone. Does that make sense? All right, so I want my cord behind me. I'll go ahead. I feel for it. Seems like I got a little more still. Outside good. And right now I have all burrs removed. Wait for it to stop. Place it in the center of the table. If I was done with it, plug it and wind it up. Now, if someone else is waiting to use it, do I need to put it away and make them get it out? No, I can say, hey, you're next, right? You're using that, and they can use it. But if you're the last one to use it, make sure you get it put away. If I've got 3 guys needing to use it, and I've got 2 grinders, should they both be out? Yeah, there's no reason that you're well waiting in line for this one grinder when we have 2 of them. Obviously, if 3 of you are needing to grind, one of you is going to have to wait patiently until the first one is done. So, any questions about the portable angle grinder? Again, it is a tool that you will use quite for almost every time to grind the burrs off your welded plates. Now, if there's 5 guys in a line waiting for the grinder, I might say, hey, 2 of you go back and belt sander. But unless I say that, the main way to remove burrs from your welded plates is going to be the angle grinder. Any questions? All right, that's all I've got.